All right, week 6, AI assisted productivity. The first step for this week's assignment was task identification. I'm a designer, and one task that hinders my productivity and enjoyment is summarizing video recordings of user interviews. How do I do it traditionally? Well, traditionally, I sit there and watch the recording of the video, then I take notes. In tandem with note taking, I organize my notes into categories. The regular categories are goals, pain points, challenges, possible solutions, workflow, and tools used. Once my notes are organized, I identify top findings like the top 5 findings and collect quotes supporting each finding. Normally, this process takes 2.5 times longer than the recording itself. So, for example, a 30-minute interview would take an hour and 15 minutes to refine into usable and reusable information. Given how long the process takes, it's not surprising to turn to a custom GPT for help. In my initial configuration, I provided the instructions to take in files and provide an output organized by my usual categories. I also provided a white paper on user research note-taking practices, best practices for reference. I ran into some hiccups though initially. The conversation starter prematurely triggered the analysis instead of having the GPT confirm that it was ready to start as I wanted. I also learned that I had to get the video recording transcribed first. Even if this simply means outsourcing that process to another tool, that was still added work for me. The initial output was actually surprisingly accurate, and it didn't even take a minute to complete. There were 2 areas that I thought it could improve on though. First, it didn't do the top 5 analysis with supporting quotes. Instead, it blended my categories into 5 sections. And second, it didn't track the time to hire times mentioned by the user. So in my new configuration, I emphasized a more rigid structure and to take in additional instructions such as tracking time to hire numbers. The final output was imperfect, but more helpful. As you can see, I got closer to my top 5 analysis as findings were now paired with quotes. I did get an additional section for additional instructions, but as you can see, for some reason it got cut off. I learned though that I could get what I wanted from further conversation rather than expecting it all from the initial output. I imagine that with more configuration, tweaking, that I should get much closer to what I was looking for. So after experimentation and application, the assignment asked for an outcome analysis. First, looking at the quality of output, you'll see that GPT came close to my analysis. When it came to gathering quotes to support learnings, it was on par. The thing with gathering quotes is that in a true analog world, I would have just sat there and potentially have to re-listen to a clip a few times to understand what a user was saying. So given that I wasn't myself very perfect at listening and tracking, I didn't expect GPT to have like those issues, and so that led to pretty much parity. The next part of the analysis was impact. I made impact about adjusted quality. Quality is better than velocity in this line of work, so I gave quality a 2.5 multiplier. And I did that because I would, in general, take 80% quality if the task could be done in half the time. For speed, you'll see that I was thoroughly beat by GPT because, after all, you can't be instant. So the final scoring was represented as efficiency. So higher quality faster means better. Because GPT's quality wasn't that much worse than mine, I was thoroughly overtaken by its speed. In the end, GPT was 80% better at reviewing user interview recordings, though I would have to caveat that, as others have reported, I wouldn't actually task GPT for anything high stakes. That 1 point difference in quality may be a huge difference in those instances. So I had to qualify 80% better by 80% better in those instances where a stakeholder is actually willing to take a hit at quality for faster turnarounds. So lastly, we have the reflective assessment. And for ease of integration, I'm on the fence on this one. On its face, yes, it was in fact like easier or fairly easy to integrate GPT into my workflow and get some value, right? But there was some effort to tweak the configuration to where I thought it was acceptable. And after that, even when I got to it to that point, that I still experienced some drift. So for example, if I gave GPT additional instructions, it would undo the pre-configured structure. And so I kind of worried about the fact that I would have to continue to update or keep my GPT in line. As for effectiveness, GPT was very effective at organizing material, and as mentioned before, it reviews material more precisely, word for word. So it's fantastic at collecting quotes and even finding details that I might have missed. I would definitely rely on it to get a head start on finding information I'm looking for. As for shift in perspective, I already had a bias that GPT would be really good at certain tasks, so I was pretty surprised when it failed in the areas that I thought it could handle easily. Largely, of course, that meant something as simple as performing like the additional instructions after the main instructions. I was surprised too that GPT never got quite good at doing a top five analysis through the initial prompt. I thought that it could have done that like it normally does if you had a conversation with it. Of course, I found that if I separated out the tasks, like if I first had it do a summary and then do a top five analysis, that would have been better, but I'm not sure why that was the case. And so, with that, that concludes my week 6 AI assisted productivity assignment. Thank you.